Hey everybody, it's Shayna Galen, and I'm excited because today is release day for Third Sense of Charm. Yay, finally! I've been waiting forever for this book to come out, and it's finally out. And today I thought it might be fun to share a story, a real life story that inspired the meeting of the hero and the heroine in the book. My story certainly didn't lead to any romance, but it is real life inspiration. So a few years ago, we got a little dog named Sparky, and I'm sure some of you have seen pictures of her on Facebook. And my daughter had also started kindergarten, so we were walking Sparky to school because we live close enough to school that we can walk. And we were walking to school in the morning with Sparky, and my daughter's shoelace had come untied. And so she asked me if I could tie it. She wasn't very good at tying her shoes back then. And I said, sure. And I asked her to hold on to Sparky's leash. And her school is located on a very busy street. And so, of course, being, 6 years old or 5 years old or however old she was, she let go of the leash and the dog ran into traffic. And then I, without even thinking, chased after the dog and caught the dog. But in the process, of course, almost got hit by cars. So I kind of thought, well, it was very traumatic for me. And then I thought, well, that would be a fun way for a hero and heroine to meet. Maybe she's racing after a dog and he saves her from being hit by a car. So that's actually the inspiration for the meeting in Third Sense of Charm. And I thought I would read that meeting for you today. And hopefully you will think it's cute. Okay, so this is in the hero's point of view, and his name is Ewan. And he is walking along. He says he hadn't walked very far when he was surprised by a streak of brown and white bounding past him and into St. James, which was crowded with carts and carriages at this time of day. The creature barely avoided being trampled by a horse pulling a cart filled with produce. It scurried away from the large hooves and wheels and then huddled, frozen, in the center of the street. "Watch out!" a woman's voice called right before she barreled into him. But as he was large and she was much smaller, the impact sent her reeling. He might have caught her and set her on her feet if she hadn't scrambled away, heading directly into the street. Ewan watched in disbelief as she stumbled directly in the path of the coach and four, whose driver had obviously given his horses free rein. She looked up, saw the approaching conveyance, but instead of jumping back onto the curb, she ran into the coach's path and scooped up the little brown and white scrap of fur. Now both she and the furry creature would be trampled and run down. Ewan didn't think. He acted. Heart pounding in his suddenly tight chest, he jumped into the street, crossing to the woman in 2 huge strides. He yanked her out of the path of the coach and four, feeling the breath of the horses on his neck as he shoved her to safety on the other side of St. James. His heart thudded painfully against his ribs with what he recognized as fear and panic. They'd almost died. For a moment, St. James became a blood-soaked field, and the clatter of hooves was the sound of rifles. Ewan closed his eyes and drew a slow breath, and then he shook the memory off and came back to the present. But his hands were still shaking. Ewan had shoved the woman a bit hard, and she'd fallen to her knees. He would have to beg her forgiveness, though she should really be the one groveling at his feet with gratitude. But instead of looking up at him with appreciation in her eyes, she scowled. "I almost crushed Wellington." Ewan looked right, then left for the Duke. Not seeing the general, Ewan glanced in confusion back down at the woman. She pointed to the furball. "My dog! You pushed me so hard I almost crushed him." So the dog was named Wellington, and she blamed Ewan for the danger to the animal. Ewan frowned at her. Was he supposed to apologize for saving her life and that of the beast? Perhaps she had become momentarily disoriented by the tumult. "You ran into the street," he pointed out. Anyone could see the street was busy and dangerous. She waved a hand dismissively, as though the fact that she had almost been flattened under the hooves and wheels flying past them was but a small matter. "Wellington escaped his collar and leash at Green Park. I've been chasing him all this way." That explained why she had been on St. James Street, which was typically the domain of men, and why the dog was running. It did not explain why she did not thank him, but he'd come to expect women to be difficult. Ewan grasped her arm and pulled her to her feet. Belatedly, he realized he should have offered her his arm, but now it was too late. Where do you live? Now it was her turn to frown. She had light green eyes, framed by delicate brows which slanted inward in confusion. Then she blinked. Oh dear, no. You must not escort me home. You look like some sort of Viking warrior or Norse god. My mother would. Well, best not to discuss what my mother might do. Ewan crossed his arms and stared down at her. This pose usually elicited tears from those of the fairer sex, but this one shook her head again in defiance. My maid is probably wringing her hands at the park. I must return. He hadn't looked very closely at the woman, but now he noted her fine quality dress and spencer. Both were soiled with dirt and animal hair. She was a lady. Now the lack of gratitude made sense. He'd known many such ladies. They looked down their nose at everyone. This time, Ewan made certain to offer his arm. She looked at it in horror. Do you want my mother to confine me to my room? She asked. Ewan did not know how to answer this inquiry, so he merely continued to stand with his arm crooked. She pushed it down, or rather, he allowed her to push it down. No, thank you, sir. I am perfectly capable of returning to the park on my own. If I encounter any difficulty, Wellington will protect me. Ewan glanced at the furball. The dog wouldn't have scared a flea. And that is how Ewan and Lorraine meet. And of course, that's not their last meeting. So I hope you enjoyed the excerpt, and I hope that you put the book on your TBR list and think about buying it. And I hope you also have a great week. Thanks.